is cell structure, function, and homeostasis. So what we're going to do today is just begin. Some of this is review, if you've had applied biology or even a review from middle school science. So the first thing we're going to start off with is, let's go ahead and put the date. And the topic is Intro to Life's Legos. What we already know is all living things are made of cells and one or more cells. So just to kind of recap some of that vocabulary, a Lego is a building block. We've been talking about building blocks, and I use the blocks of this wall to represent a monomer. Now, monomers, those little individual little molecules, are smaller, way smaller than an individual cell. Cells are built of those different molecules. So I want to make that statement in here because sometimes people get confused with what's the size of that compared to a cell. So the first thing is all cells are made of inorganic and organic substances. Number one, water. Okay, so we know most of the contents of our bodies are, and that means our cells, is water. Number two, protein. Okay, and then the others we know are lipids, nucleic acids. And we have lots of other compounds that are necessary. We have to have iron, and we have to have calcium, and in different forms. So we have to have oxygen molecules coming in these individual cells, and the release of CO2. And we're going to be producing lots of different substances. But these cells are made of this stuff. So next, we know that organisms, no matter who they are all made or composed of one or more cells, one unicellular or more multicellular. Okay? All right, so far that's kind of a review, but you can kind of see that's the backstory. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and talk about the cell theory. Deal is a theory we know is established after a conclusion's been drawn and repeatedly supported continuously multiple times, and has stood the test of time, and then eventually a theory can become a law. But the cell theory basically says what we all already know, and that was discovered and just by several people, and their discoveries have been compiled into this theory. So there are some people, third period, you don't need to know the people, so don't worry about writing them down. Fourth period, you do need to know these people. So I'm going to start with the people, and then we'll do the theory. So the cell theory, first of all, says that all organisms, no matter who you are, not unless you're a virus, all organisms are made of one or more cells. The person that's responsible, I guess, who contributed to that, there's several, but the two kind of more famous people, one is Sladen. His last name is Sladen, and he said all plants are made of cells. Well, that was stated before Schwann says that all animals are made of cells. And several folks thereafter contributed and said that lots of other organisms, the protists and the bacteria and the fungi are too. Before these fellas, though, there's a guy by the name of Robert Hooke. And this guy actually discovered and named cells. And he actually looked at cork, and like cork in a wine bottle, it's part of dead plant cells is what cork is. And so he saw this dead plant cell. It looked like an empty space under the microscope. All this was empty because it was dead. But it was this little matrix. So they said each of those is a cell. And so he was the first to actually coin the term. Okay, but again, Hooke is one of the people, any of these starred items, third period, don't worry about writing it down. I'm going to move this up just a little bit. Well, y'all can see a little bit better. All right, number 2 is cells are the basic unit of life, or of structure and function. So what that means, it sounds like it pretty much is the same thing as number 2, is it means that if you look at an individual cell, all the 10 characteristics of life occurs within that cell. So we have organization, we have metabolism, there's a need for energy, there is reproduction, there's heredity, there's adaptation in shape and in function. So we see all of these, there's a need for homeostasis, and they respond to stimuli. So they can do all of those life characteristics within that individual cell. Okay, the third one is, well, where do these cells come from? A guy by the name of Virchow actually got credit for this, and he said cells come from cells, or let's put from other cells, from pre-existing cells. So this is where you see a cell and it divides, cell division. And he actually, his name was Virchow, and he said cells come from pre-existing cells. So here's the cell theory, and this is what is accepted as far as what cells are made of, and it's supported. Okay, so the next thing is size of cells. All cells are determined, I know, by the DNA because we're restricted by that, but what really determines the size of a cell is they vary, first of all, from bacteria being the smallest to a giraffe nerve cell being the largest. And this is like I don't know, something micrometers. Micrometers is 10. So I'm just going to put micrometers. It's like 10 to the negative 6. So think about a millimeter is 10 to the negative 2. I mean, a 10 to the negative 3. So you can see a tiny little millimeter, but after that, it gets very, very, very small. So bacteria, we have to use higher powered microscopes or more magnification to see them compared to a larger cell. It's controlled by its surface to volume ratio. And what that means is, if this is the outer surface, if we add that up and compare it to its volume, if the surface gets to be so stretched out and the cell gets to be so big, it can't actually meet the needs of that cell. It gets too big, and eventually it's like a balloon. If the surface area gets so large and you keep blowing it up, eventually it's going to pop. So that cell can't function well. So the surface to volume ratio keeps everything in check to make sure that the contents are secure, but also that all the processes inside the cell can happen efficiently. So it's kind of like getting too many people in a room. It's harder to get things done because everyone's bumping into each other. And it's better when we have maybe a smaller group who can be and work together and get more done at one time, so it can meet the needs of or do the task. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is what's the difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. Okay, so prokaryotic cells we know are bacteria. And they actually come in about 3 different shapes. They can be round, and that's a coccus bacteria. They can be oval, which is a bacillus bacteria. Or they can be spirally, which looks more spiral. Okay, today for your models, you're going to choose between those 2 shapes. Okay, you can make a circular coccus bacteria shape or an oval or a rod-shaped bacillus bacterium. But what makes these cells different from those is that these lack membrane-bound organelles, compartments that do specific jobs. So membrane-bound lack organelles, don't have them, and a nucleus. So that means it doesn't have a special place for the DNA to be housed. However, eukaryotic cells, we know, are a protist and fungus and animal cells and plant cells. And because there's that eukarya again, and these have what those don't have. They have organelles and a nucleus. And those were 2 of the words that you had last night to look up for homework. And we'll be able to see that in a more conceptual way. So what do they both have in common? Ribosomes. And ribosomes look like little dots. We'll see in just a second. But this is where proteins are made. Okay, so ribosomes is like little protein factories in the cell. All right, we also have cytoplasm. And cytoplasm is what I call the jelly guts of the cell. They also have genetic material. Which is DNA and RNA. Now, for the DNA, we can see it in the form of a chromosome, and we're going to find out that bacteria have a special kind of DNA that's like a bonus DNA, and then they also have a cell membrane. Not a cell wall. Not all cells have a cell wall. So a cell membrane. So this is what they both types have, are these 3 things. Now, let's come over here and we're going to draw a bacterium. So at this point, we need to pause, and you guys need to get five colored pencils or a marker, no Sharpies. And what we'll do, or it could be pens, but we're going to color code and draw the bacterial cell. And that's what you're going to use to make your models today as a guide. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a cell wall, and I'm going to draw the Bacillus bacterium. So the cell wall is thick. It's harder. So when you choose your materials, you're going to choose something that's harder. On the inside is the cell membrane, and it is on the inner side of that cell wall, and it's flexible. It's also called the plasma membrane. Okay, so there's that one. And then get a different color, and let's go ahead and put our circular chromosome. Now this would be like, I want to show you, this is what it looks like. If this is the chromosome, then it would be 2 strands, but it would be like this. So it's not, it's kind of stringy and flexible, but it has 2 parts, like you double up a necklace. So I drew one part, but it also has, oops, another part on it. So that's one circular chromosome. Okay. All right. So next, there's our bonus DNA. We have a little plasmid. Now this is just a circle. It would be like this, but it's going to be very small. Okay. Just a little small ring of extra bonus DNA. And we'll find out what that's used for a little bit later. But this is plasmid DNA. It actually has a hollow center. So it's just like a little circle, plasmid DNA. And then we have ribosomes. And the ribosomes, I'm going to put as yellow dots. These are tiny. They're a lot smaller than eukaryotic ribosomes. So these are tiny dots, not large components at all. So these little tiny dots are the ribosomes. And I hope that y'all can see that. I'm going to write it darker just in case. All right, so here's the ribosome. Now, the last thing is that cytoplasm, and that's all this white, all the jelly guts. So the cytoplasm would be like Jell-O, and everything else kind of stuck in that Jell-O in a ball. So there's the bacterial cell. Y'all have fun. I know you're going to do a great job. See you Monday.